on the funk, it was like on the one. Yeah, okay, we're gonna put it out. So with the music came other musics, and people started making moves on those music, like the Funky Penguin, for example, which later became this. Everyone knows that one. Then the Funky Chicken as well. So this one. That was the Funky Chicken, and you had a couple other, like the Breakdown, and a couple more, but I'm not gonna explain those because else the hour will be over. So there was like a dancer named Don Campbell. He was trying to move to the song "Do the Funky Chicken" from, I forgot his name.
You write it?
No, I wrote it. I got it.
Good.
Rufus Thomas made that song, and that's how kind of locking was originated. Then the style itself levitated to multiple levels, where people started to kind of experiment with different type of moves. That's where poppin' came in '77 with the Boogaloos, the Boogaloo's Rock, I think, with Boogaloo Sam, and from that, oh wait, I forgot about breaking.
Very important part.
Tell us a bit about breaking.
All right, breaking. Breaking is a style that sort of spin off from hip hop because after a little while, people started experimenting with more rock moves, but after a while they started to notice that every single song has some sort of breakdown where the singer sort of voice and the instrumentals take over, and you simply have a bunch of drums that go all wild and all sorts of stuff. And people thought, hey, that's really cool, I want to dance to that. And that part of the song is called a break, and that's where the name breakdance comes from, because the breakers, they wanted to like make a special move during that sort of period.
What was the one that extended the break?
The one that extended the break?
Yeah. Does anybody know who extended the break on the songs? Who made it danceable? Who had block parties in the Bronx? His name is up there. DJ Cool Herc. He is the godfather among African Bambaataa of hip hop, and he is a Jamaican DJ, I think. Came to the Bronx, New York, and had block parties. Came out with his car, big speakers behind him, rocking his songs, going around the block, having block parties. That's where also the hip hop culture came from. Anybody knows anything about hip hop culture?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me something about it.
Well, I think hip hop and where it comes from is really, it's from a place of really just the MC, you know, just being able to play with those samples, playing with those loops, and really being able to move with it and kind of working with the way that you flip from track to track. And that's just where it starts off from, the way it develops, you know, that's a whole long other story.
So this is about DJing and MCing, master of ceremony and disc jockey. Also, sorry. So yeah, from there on out, he had this crew. Some people were also into graffiti writing. You see sometimes, even out there, if you're out of the convention, you can sometimes see graffiti on the walls. Well, that's also part of hip hop culture.
Yeah, basically where it started.
Sorry, I dressed it off again.
It started in the Bronx with mainly youth of color who were trying to find their way into society, because society was very harsh in those times for people of color. So they started to they wanted to meet among themselves, so they went to the streets, and that's basically how they met each other. And as a result of, as he explained, DJs standing up and just blasting music throughout the streets, these people started gathering and started like dancing to it because they thought it was fun. At the same time, there were a lot of gang clashes, there was a lot of violence, and as a sort of remedy to that problem, they started to instead have dance battles. They started to just dance against each other instead of actually having actual violence. And yeah, this was more of a local phenomenon. But after a while, when the internet was developed, when television was developed, the culture started like spreading around the world. And one of the biggest players in that is the MTV channel. You'll probably know about it. It's a television channel mainly focused around music and musical influences. And what happened is that MTV didn't just show music from locals, they showed music from around the world, from America and from people directly. So as a result, a lot of rappers stood up, a lot of
Dancers as well.
yeah, dancers, a lot of more experimental types of music got promoted and shown to the world. And as a result, people like Eminem managed to sort of rise up and get famous. And that's how hip-hop culture also sort of spread around, because it was now shown to the world and people thought it was cool and they picked it up. And as a result, after a lot of people picked it up, other larger parties like Red Bull started to spring in. Red Bull probably very famous among you for, one, the energy drinks, but also for promoting a lot of sports events. And among those is hip-hop and dance-related events. So,
On to the next page.
Yep. Definition, what makes hip-hop hip-hop?
Okay, so what makes hip hop hip hop? Well, we've already discussed a couple of parts of hip hop. So the first 5 elements we've already had. Skip that. I forgot about beatboxing. Everybody knows beatboxing, right? Yeah, cool stuff like that. Like sounds you can make with your mouth besides speaking, yelling, and maybe. Sorry. Okay. Speaking, yelling, and maybe some other noises you'd like to make. Beatboxing became part of it. You can make zipper sounds, you can make other type of sounds, but it originated from people that didn't really have the speakers or the equipment or the money to buy equipment. So they started kind of making beats on their own, or started making mimicking the beats in their head. So they were like, and that's how it kind of grew bigger towards stages, and now whole platforms of beatboxing are going on right now. The other 4 elements are street fashion, street language, street knowledge, and street
Entrepreneurialism.
Yeah.
I'll tell you guys a little bit about that. Basically, as I explained before, in hip hop culture, you also kind of want to represent yourself, want to represent your groups. And one very important playmaking tool in that is the fashion, the language, the knowledge, and the entrepreneurialism. People use the fashion to dress extravagantly. They wore very wide shirts, very large pants, very baggy clothes that, one, they could move very well on, but 2, they were very unique in how they dressed. They wanted to represent themselves. They wanted to represent their own style and make like their own personality shine through. And that's part of what made them dress like that. Then street language, of course, as every culture has when it grows a little bit, you start to develop your own slang, your own language to sort of communicate with each other more easily or more in tone with the rest of your community. So as a result, of course, a lot of street language formed, which also plays a very big part of hip hop culture. On top of that, street knowledge is also a very important part. So you need to know who you want to talk to, how you should talk to people, how you should go around, because these streets were still kind of dangerous, as there was still gang violence going on and everything, and you wanted to make sure that you were in the right place at the right time and talking with the right people. And so street knowledge was very important. And lastly, because these were sort of less fortunate people at the start, they decided to sort of stand their own ground, make their own worth rise up. So they went to entrepreneurialism to make their own businesses and sell stuff among their own people. You have rappers rising up who made a lot of money by just getting big as rappers through MTV, through other channels, through the internet. You have people selling clothes, because of course the street fashion doesn't come from nowhere. It has to be made somewhere. And yeah, that's how those 4 parts came along. And then finally, as explained before, breakdance is sort of spin-off of hip-hop. And it has a couple features that really set it apart from other similar dances. Firstly, there's the top rocks, which is part of almost all hip-hop dance, which is just how every breakdancer started, is just standing up, moving, hopping. You get a little bounce in every single move you do, and that's top rocks. But a second part is that sets breakdance really apart is floor works, or footworks as sometimes called, and that's what made breaking at first is just you get down onto the floor and you start doing moves like this instead of standing up, which opened the way for a whole new layer of moves. And on top of that, a very important part of breaking is taking poses, and something that takes taking poses to the next level is freezes. Because in addition to just like standing still on top, making a cool pose, you can also make poses in different shapes that haven't been explored before. So, for example, as he just showcased, you can do a lot of cool stuff with freezes. Then, once breakdance started developing more, people started noticing that when you're on the ground, or when you're like not just standing on the 2 feet with 2 feet on the ground, you can also sort of get more momentum, get more motion going. And as a result, power started also becoming a part of it. You started having actual moves that sort of get their motion as you made them. And as a result, you sort of get a new level of movement on top of it. And
Maybe you can showcase a power move.
Sure. So, for example, you have this funny thing called the coffee grinder, which is just a footwork move. However, if you flip it and give it more motion, you get something like this, which is a power move because it requires more power. Then, finally, tricks, which is not exactly something invented by breakdance, but it's sort of migrated into breakdance, and that's tricking, and that's just things that are very explosive, one-time things that you do. You don't necessarily need to do these, but they do make you show for it. And it's stuff like flips, cartwheels like this, and just generally being athletic. And yeah, that's the most important elements of breakdance. Then,
Okay, so question?
I have a question. Does a macaco count as a cartwheel?
Macaco?
Yeah.
That's the backwards one, right?
Yes.
yeah.
No, it's more, it's a combination between cartwheel backwards and backhand spring. So it's like you're going like this,
Yeah.
like
I
overhead.
know the move. I
Yes.
just asked me if it counts as a cartwheel.
No, it's part
It's
part of
still-
tricking, but it's
Actually,
not a cartwheel.
within capoeira, it still kind of classifies as a cartwheel. So yeah.
Alright.
So I hope that clarifies it for you. Maybe if you have a different answer, I would like there as well, because we're all learning, right?
It's just a move I have learned over the time.
All right. Well, it still counts as a cartwheel.
Alright.
Okay, moving on. So we've discussed already a couple of styles with you, like popping, locking.
Breaking and rocking.
Everybody knows their English stuff. We haven't really discussed hip hop with you. Does anybody know where hip hop comes from? Like the dance style itself?
Bronx again?
Yeah.
Yes.
Bronx?
But the moves, like the party grooves. Does anybody know where it comes from? Like,
I mean, if you go to the roots of it, it's all jazz or soul jazz dance, right?
I mean, yeah, some of it worked.
Yeah,
But
but
okay, so yeah, there are a couple of moves within every style. Everybody knows the pas de bourrée.
Yep.
It's used almost in every dance style. It's the most foundation move there is. So yes, there are influences from other styles, especially from locking, which has influences from jazz and Lindy Hop. So that's kind of as well where it comes from. It comes from the era of New Jack Swing, where they went to house parties, and they all wanted to like dance and wanted to be original. So they were creating dance moves like the Bart Simpson, Brooklyn, the Shamrock, all came from the New Jack Swing era. And from New Jack Swing became a more boom bap sound. Is where they were, with what type of equipment again were they doing it?
Boom boxes.
With boom boxes. Can you tell us more about it?
Oh, boom box is just like example. If you take one of these things, you take two of them together and you put them on your shoulder and you just drag it around and you have a boom box. And as explained earlier, they just walked around with those. They had them in the back of their cars, and they just made a lot of music with it, which made the sound reverberate very much. And you sort of had the bass popping very explosively. And as a result, people started like moving their bodies to the style to also recreate more explosive movements. So instead of just bouncing around a little bit, they just popped their body to more explosively exaggerate their moves. And yeah, that's where popping sort of comes from. And yeah, one of the most important parts is just moving very sporadically, moving very like sort of strictly to create very explosive moves.
So locking, does anybody know where locking comes from?
Campbell locking.
From gay clubs.
Not specifically, but there were locking in queer clubs. Okay, so locking came from LA, where Duncan is from. There are two styles of locking. Does anybody know one? Oh, one was already named.
Campbell locking.
Campbell locking. Does anybody know the other style? Valley locking. Those are more. This is where the 5-star point comes from. And a couple other moves by. There's so much information I need to remember that the sometimes forget. So please forgive me for it. So yeah, that's a couple of styles of locking. Locking came from LA, Don Campbell. Then there were other people that were kind of creating moves, like Skeeter Rabbit came with this one. Or you have the Schoolbot. You have the Stop and Go. And another one.
Scooby-Doo?
This Scooby-Doo. That's what I just did just now.
Yes.
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a Schoolbot.
Yeah.
And they have the Schoolbot hop as well. Oh. And a couple other more nice variations of locking moves. Locking also have 5 foundational moves. You have the lock, the bring up lock. You have the wrist rolls. You have the paces. You have the 5. You have the points. And there's the 6th one, that's the sneak. That's where you bring character into your dance. And that's where sneak comes from. So there you have the 5 and the 6th. Moving on to house. Yes. House. Okay, so I'm going to keep on asking because I'm curious. Does anybody know where house comes from? House dance.
Detroit.
Detroit. Yes, yes. But I'm going to break on my nose.
So I guess no, house was big in Detroit.
Does anybody else have it
Detroit.
that they have the error that when they grab their phone they suddenly forget what they're doing?
Yeah, always.
It's like opening the
It
fridge.
just
Like
happened. And like a big buffer going on.
Did you go to Porofinice?
Does house come from Chicago?
Yeah, Chicago.
Oh yeah.
It came from Chicago. I'm a really bad person.
I'm just here to yap about what we love. That's
Yeah.
all.
Isn't that like 60 to 70% of the panels here anyway? So
Yeah, exactly.
Just shut the passion.
Okay, so yeah, it came from Chicago. There were like club parties going on, like from the Summit on the Hill, for example, the Citadel, the Shelter is also one known from that. This where people get together, like house is a really underground, just like wagging and voguing from a queer community from the underground scene. And that's like a really soulful, spiritual, more type of style. So like it was really a social dance because you did it with each other. So I started with like a jack, like a more grinding motion, like you're right here. And that's where synonyms came from, like the chase. You have the running man, I think what it's called. They have the side step or sidewalk. Side step or sidewalk. I keep mixing them up because they're like almost exactly the same, but you're on different sides. And you have so much more moves. It comes from house, and that's more like on the. So it's not like more on the end of the song instead of the one. So that's also a funny thing about house dance. Anything more about house? Yeah, that one faster than normal.
Alright, well, finally hip hop, I suppose. Hip hop is
I already discussed hip hop. New text one.
yeah,
Porticos.
well, yeah, that's the most important one. And finally breaking, but we've already largely discussed that. It's mainly sets it apart by its floor focus and its focus on making poses, making shapes instead of just the moves. And while you make those shapes, you kind of want to transition to them very smoothly, very fast, and make it look good. You just sort of every time there's a break in the song, you want to hit a really cool pose through either a freeze, through multiple ways. Right, next page. Cool transition.
Battles. Tell us something about battles.
Alright, battles. Well, what is a battle? I'm sure you should already know it, either from a musical or from a non-musical standpoint. I'm not sure if you followed castle battles, but this is a little bit different. Basically, what is a battle? It's instead of a competition type of deal, you don't just show your choreography, you don't just show your moves.
Like we just have an Enter the Arena.
Instead, you just get some music and you kind of have to deal with it. You just have to invent some moves on the spot. You kind of invent your own combo on the spot. And a battle is usually against another person. So you have another person standing against you, and instead of just showing what you have, you sort of have a conversation with your opponent, like, hey, I can do this. And meanwhile, your opponent can then respond like, oh, I can do that too, or I can do that better, or I have a cooler move, or that sort of stuff. And that's how you get battle from it. Then, yeah, very important part of battle is you present yourself. You just talk to the person and you'd be like, hey, this is me, this is my style, and that sort of stuff. But that's not the only possible way. As I discussed earlier, there's also crews that form. So instead of just representing yourself, you have people who also present their crew. They present their group of friends that they hang out with, that they train with. And yeah, it's...
What about the callouts, though? The callouts.
Yeah. Okay. So the callouts, that's actually where I know it's been told to me. Maybe the information is a bit different. Callouts come from ciphers within clubs. Ciphers we're going to talk about in a bit, but basically it's like a big circle. Everybody shows up. Yay! It's all nice. But people started getting callouts from things because somebody else thought they were bad. So yeah. So they're calling them out for their bad moves, and then they started battling it out for who's better than somebody else. And that's actually where battling came from. So it's pretty raw. It is not like something sweet. People were getting dodged, sometimes even jump kicked. So the battle scene was pretty rough. That's where I know is where battle scenes, where the callouts came from within the battle scene. So it was really to represent yourself and your style.
Yeah. And then there's a couple different types of formats for battles. The first one you probably already know, that's just 1v1. You just stand against another person and you just have a best of 2, best of 3, best of 3, best of 5, and you just battle like 2 rounds, and the person who has the best rounds, they win. That sort of deal. However, in breaking and hip hop culture, there's other formats as well. One of the most famous ones is the 7-2 smoke. And basically what it means is you have a group of 8 people, sometimes more, but usually 8. And you have one king of the hill. He stands on one side of the battle, and you have the other people who just form a line. And basically the king of the hill has to battle a challenger. And the goal is that the king of the hill sort of beats 7 people. He just smokes 7 people is what they call it.
That's why it's called 7 smoke.
Yeah, however, if the king of the hill is defeated, the person who defeated him has to be the king of the hill, and the old king of the hill has to line up, and then you just continue that until one person smokes 7 people, and that's how you get the 7 to smoke. It's not about actually smoking; it's just you just smoke someone, you just beat them, you know. And yeah.
Most of the time, because of time management, 7 to smoke isn't even gonna reach the 7. Mostly about 4 or 5-ish. So the person with the most points usually wins. But when he hits the 7, hey, you're the king of the hill.
The whole club goes wild. Alright then. A format that's kind of unique to breaking is blending and colliding format. So in breaking, you usually have a separation between male and female breakers because they kind of vary in style. You notice that female breakers, they more often have actual better moves, however their moves are less big. Like they put less power in it, and they instead put that effort into making their moves look nice. So that makes it a bit difficult to judge sometimes. That for judges who just give favor to one style or another, so they just decide to split. Except for the Bonnie and Clyde format. What the Bonnie and Clyde format does is basically you have one person, one B girl and one B boy, and you just put them together, and then you get a full sort of clashing styles. But that makes it really fun to watch sometimes because they both represent something different, and they just make a duo together. They just sort of battle together.
So that's 2v2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then lastly, as a bigger sort of type, you have crew battles, and instead of just 1v1, you have an entire group of people that you train with, that you battle together with. Sometimes it's done at 3v3, but usually it's just the entire crew just goes out. They form a sort of line, and then you just have one person going one by one, and it continues until a certain amount of rounds have been played. And yeah, what's really fun about those is that you get crews forming routines. Instead of just freestyling, you have the crew study in a routine together, and it's just a sequence of moves, just a choreography, and they just make it together. And when there's like a song that everyone knows is like, oh yeah, this is a good song, they just all walk forwards and they just all do the routine, and you get a really fun sequence of dance. And yeah, then finally, where can you look up these battle events? Here's a list of very popular, very large battle events that you could possibly look up videos if you want to know more. Most of these are just, they have the classic tournament format, so you will mainly see the 1v1 battles and the crew battles. However, Crash Fest is kind of an outlier in this, because Crash Fest is, instead of people actually performing a dance, you have, the DJ puts on music, and he goes like, okay, everyone show me your coolest move. And then everyone just throws a move, and they keep throwing a move until just a victor is called with, like, you have the coolest move of the night. And that's how you just continue.
Mm-hmm.
A freestyle session, if you do you want to tell something about that?
Freestyle sessions. Wow. Yeah, freestyle sessions are most of the time, from what I know, freestyle sessions are jams and ciphers combined. Maybe move on to the next page for that one.
Yeah, sure. Alright, let's get started with part 2. Let me check the time real quick. What do we have?
Yeah, we've been playing it, so.
Alright, part 2.
Okay, so what I just said, ciphers and jams. Here we are back at it again. Everybody knows the song Pop Up the Jam. You know. Well, it's not like a part of jam you're just pumping up. It's literally just a whole club dancing together. That's what you can call a jam. A get together, like a meet to hang out, chill, have some snacks and dance, throw shapes together is what you can call a jam. That's true. So a jam is basically just a get together of dancers and share the crest with each other. Kind of like what you can do at the cipher as well, but ciphers sometimes are more of a show off and jams are more social. So where you can get to meet people, you can even network, you can have a little chat with one another, get to see each other again, have an opportunity to dance with each other again, besides battles or other events. Anything else you want to say about jams?
Well, it's kind of similar to just a furry meet. Like, you just hang out, you have a bunch of people that you know, you have a bunch of people that you don't know, but other people know, and you just hang out, you just dance a little bit together, you form some ciphers, for example, within the jam, and you just dance, you show off a little bit, and he's like, oh, that's a cool move, can you teach me it, or something like that, and you just connect with each other. You just have a drink afterwards, there's people selling shirts, there's people making food, cool local foods often, and you just, it's a very fun experience. Yeah, kind of similar to a furry meet.
So ciphers, does anybody know what the cipher is or the definition of cipher?
Not the definition, so.
Okay, there's not really a definition, so go ahead.
Explain, talk from the heart.
So that's kind of like a dance circle, but not exactly in competitive sort of way, but with competitive spirit sort of ish in a way. I don't know.
So cipher kind of just it happens or don't. Like a cipher is alive or it is dead. If you know what I mean. I'm gonna get to the point. So if you have a cipher, The moment when I had a cipher was in other dance in Amsterdam. I was just kind of dancing and just doing tricks on the dance floor, and just people were gathering around it. And some people even were joining on the dance floor as well, like doing their own thing. And that's kind of a cipher. It just happens. You kind of invite people with your own spirit, with your own moves. People are starting to look at you and they're like, hey, that's cool. I want to know that person. Let me try it. I want to see some more. Or I got something to show as well. So they go in and they show it themselves. Sometimes it's social. Sometimes it's a call out. That's where the battles come from the ciphers, as said before. Most of the time it's just good vibes.
Good
actually.
vibes, nice spirits.
Yeah, it just happens.
Very
And it's alive, you know, everybody is looking, it's literally a closed circle. You cannot have a cipher
in a triangle.
like this. A lineup is not a cipher, I wouldn't call it that. I would more call it some sort of jam session in turns. I would call it more. So that's basically it, what I have to say for ciphers and jams, except for the difference they have. Maybe it's already there. So the difference between a cipher and a jam, from what I just told, does anybody know what the difference is? Can anybody tell it? Do I talk too fast?
I would guess a jam is kind of planned in a way, and a cipher is, it's kind of the difference between a performance, that an open performance, and a street jam in music.
Yeah.
Where the street jam, you just kind of sit down with an instrument and somebody comes along, has a guitar with them, somebody has a drum with them, and it just kind of happens. Like the rhythm gets created as the situation goes along, and that's a cipher. And the jam is more of a, hey, here's an open band call out, here are the songs and stuff that you can practice in, and that you can show off.
Mhm.
And here's the notes and songs you can play, and everything's already preset in a way.
That's right.
Sort of.
So that's kind of an explanation that I've never heard before, but it's a really great explanation though. It's really good.
It's in Leipzig, in my hometown. We have a city, like a bridge in a park, and on the bridge, every weekend there's some kind of jam session going on.
That's
wonderful.
great.
It's
Where
just-
is it?
Leipzig, it's Saxony,
I see.
and
Oh, it's
it
sick.
just sort of happens. People sit down, have some of their cajons with them, some of their guitars, some of the microphone.
Oh, that's great.
Some days you have an amp, some days you don't. And it's just kind of, it's luck of the draw. It's
that's
nice to sit
great.
down and just listen.
Yeah.
Did anybody hear?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Good to hear. So that's basically just the differences, but they're also quite alike because from my experience, you can't have a jam without a cipher, and the other way around. So they kind of go together, and they kind of separate from each other at the same time, if you know what I mean.
A symbiosis.
So what you can call it as well.
Exactly.
Isn't it clear for anybody? If anybody have any questions about it or something is not really clear, you can raise your hand and I'll gladly answer your question.
I don't have a question, I was just saying, with the jam and cipher, I feel like the jam is like the party and then the cipher is like the vibe.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Sort of, yeah.
Like, it hits a certain vibe and it becomes a cipher, but the party itself is like a jam.
Mhm.
That's what.
Like the emotion and the feeling is the most alive part about the cipher. So yeah, you're right. That's real great. Anybody else? Oh, the silence though.
Go
So
ahead.
if there are dead ciphers, how do they
Well,
keep going? Why don't they just turn back into a jam?
So the jam is still going on then. So sometimes people are just doing their thing or just hanging out and doing their own thing. If a cipher dies, it's because nobody is really doing anything. Because if there's a cipher, everybody is like jumping in and doing their thing. But if there are multiple ciphers and something impressive is going on over there, you go over there. And if there's something really empty going on here, it's like, I've seen this shit already, I'm going to the other one. So that's how a cipher can die. But yeah, most of the time it just stays alive until everybody says, okay, done, okay.
yeah.
So that's, if that answers your question. Okay, anybody else? Maybe some questions about the previous pages as well, like the history, maybe a style that you want to know.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, how did breaking develop outside of the US internationally? Like, you talked a little bit about the early history, but yeah, how did that come to develop in places?
Oh, that's a great question. How it developed was, it got, from what ended top before, they started recording it, and they started going out on TV and to other places, and that TV got international, like for MTV, for example, or even on movies. They were making movies about it, and that's how it got international, and people watched it on TV. It was like, kind of like the same thing that happened with Michael Jackson. Like, he was a young kid, oh, Michael Jackson!
Yeah. Yeah.
No, Michael Jackson. And that's the same thing that happened with breaking. So some people were like, oh, we saw a really cool windmill on TV, let me try it as well. Couldn't even do a backspin, but still tried it.
Or they saw the movie Step Up and they saw like that one guy who just did the windmills and they were like, dude, that's cool, I want to try that. And then they just go in your face, but but you know, you're a kid, you just don't break. You are very enthusiastic about it, so you just
break your nose.
Yeah, in a way.
Well, not, but that
You cannot
doesn't
do it
break your
correctly.
arm, so you just keep going, and at some point you learn it. And then other people start doing it too, and then you just create your own sort of breaking culture here. And as the internet developed more, they started also connecting with other nearby breaking communities. And then you get a more cultural exchange, and then that just made it live up more.
I remember in Hungary, like in the 90s and 2000s, when the breaking culture started appearing, the USA has a really huge implication, or not implication, but influence in like the breaking culture, to the point when in 2010 and between like 2010 and 15, all the hip hoppers rapped about that we should leave out the USA and we should follow our own style. That like the Hungary is Hungary, not like in the USA with the East and West.
Mm-hmm.
But like in the 90s, it has a huge amount of influence that with the styles and you know all what is it called? Like all the street style, graffitis and everything. It was just copying USA. In that
Yeah, in some sort of way. Still, hip hop is a culture. I'll come back to you. No, that's fine. I'll remember.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so hip hop is a culture, and it's not really stuck to a certain country. It's like for everyone. It's like I kind of sometimes I view hip hop culture the same as the furry fandom in its creative way and doing things. And the furry fandom is also international, and everybody's doing their own thing. It's kind of a breathing thing. It's like a tree in the wind. It keeps on moving. So I get where you're coming from. Styles, completely. I give you that one. Every country has its own style. Like I know that I think it was Denmark or Sweden that had its. It was really on the foundation. Netherlands was more on the concepts and more expanding. France completely threw away the bounce working groove of hip hop and just started throwing shapes and called it hip hop. Like literally, that's just what happened. It was like, oh, it's a cool hip hop dancer.
And then there's Asia, and they are mostly focused on just power, just explosive moves, just being just mainly looking cool when they're expressing themselves.
For example. So yeah, what you said, every country eventually went from textbook to their own thing.
Yeah. You had a question?
Yeah, so you all mentioned the styles being rooted in queer clubs.
Yeah.
And you know, seeing how the music developed together with the style, how, in your opinion, did it come from this, like the moves and stuff being rooted in queer clubs to like homophobia and stuff being so present in a good amount, in a larger amount of language used in some hip hop songs?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Because for me it's interesting, because if you think the style's rooted in a queer community, why did it drift away so far from the community that it came from?
As it started coming out, certain people were like, oh, we want to try that too. And those were sometimes people that were coming to the clubs and didn't know it was something queer going on. They were just enjoying the vibes, and then it kind of sort of happened. Because there was still an outside world of it, and they were sharing their dance, but they were keeping the queer community on the low because it was still a lot of violence going on, and so I had to get it on the low. A house crew that I know called Serious Steppers, like they were really, I think an OG crew, like one of the first house dance crew that I know. They were really great dancers, but they were really violent. Like some of them died at a young age because of the gang violence. Other died other ways. Some are still alive, but it's yeah, it's a whole mix-up. So that story isn't really clear. Isn't something that really came out in the open. So that's still a mystery to be solved, actually.
So it's sort of a creeping change that kind of just happened as extra groups picked up on hip hop.
Yeah, and of course it varies from place to place. Like you're gonna have more trouble in it in certain areas of the US than you're gonna have it in certain areas of Europe. Yeah, it varies. I saw them go out.
The two at the same time. We go to you. I'll remember.
I have a question about how do you find like your local hip hop culture, or like your hope, like where would you go for a jam, for example, like generally speaking? Because I have, not being in the US, I find it a lot harder to engage with the culture because it is just not as prevalent here and not rooted in the same cities.
You mean nowadays or back in the days?
Nowadays.
Nowadays, how you find this? How you find jams and stuff? Sometimes you can just walk past it and see it happen. So other times you can see it online and know the location and just have a quick pop in and see what's going on. Sometimes you can hear it from friends of yours that are dancers, or if you're just really far away from the community, you can still see things happening because it mostly just it comes by. It just comes across your face. So it just happens. I guess it's just life.
There's like two parts of it. You have sometimes you have to search for it, and sometimes it just comes into your path. But honestly, if you search around Instagram for a lot, if you search around YouTube a lot, you will find a lot of videos of certain activities. And then when you look into those, you can find those activities. And for example, those battle events that I just called out, they are also happen all around the globe. Like the freestyle session honestly happens a lot in Europe, I think. But those are bigger events. However, if you go to those, you can also you can find out videos of other events, related events, and then if you go to those things, you meet people that also know other events, and then you just basically chain it into other things. You just generally find out.
In that case, it's kind of like graffiti, because I'm more into the graffiti side of things.
Right.
And in that place, it's like you look online where you have some safe spots. Well, for me, it has to be safe spots.
Right.
And then you go to some safe spots, and then randomly you go enough, and then randomly you find someone else also on the safe spot. And then you can engage with them because you have the common interest of graffiti. And then maybe they are already established, and then you can ask them where you can go else. Or you both are new and you want to get the bond, you can become friends, do it together. Otherwise, there was also a local event that conveniently also featured graffiti. And that's where I also found someone else from France who was there as the organizer of the graffiti part of the event. And I asked them, how do you even get to know people and stuff? And he told me, yeah, on Instagram, that and that, you have events here and there all the time in France and in Luxembourg, because I come from Luxembourg. And even after the event, I sometimes found him again on the same spot that I usually go to.
That's great.
This question first, and then we'll get to you.
Oh, I was just going to.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I would say also, I'm not a hip hop dancer, but I think from my experience, it's also nice to just start taking steps towards classes if you haven't done it, because like for me, sort of in more the jazz and blues scene, we do a class and then it's like, well, we're not going to bed yet, so who wants to head down to a bar or a club or a party? And in that way you kind of start finding places where, you know, small gatherings are happening where you can just dance socially.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I'm just kind of curious what the sort of modern scene is like. Like, are moves still evolving? Like, all the time, is it still like hot, changing thing like it was in the past? That's cool.
Yeah, certainly. For example, a very infamous thing is the sort of race to the double air flare. You have this funny move where you just sort of throw yourself up in a circle. Wait, I can look up a video of it. It's probably easier.
No, do it yourself. Do it, Ender. Win the race.
Yeah,
you can give it a go.
This is like similar to that.
No, man, I don't have healthcare here. I'm not Canada.
I'm sorry, my bad.
Let's see. This is like you know.
Start in a kneeling position on.
Is this a WikiHow on a screen reader?
Welcome to your first furry convention.
One knee. With your other leg stretched out in front of you, place your hands on the ground and shift your weight forward onto your hands. Use your momentum to kick your legs over your head and around in a circular motion. As your legs come around. Push off with your hands and lift your body off the ground. Extend your legs out in front of you and start spinning in the AI or .asu. You can master it.
Like this is an air flare. Well, similar to like these old mythical Greek math problems that have no solution, there's a quest to get like a double air flare. In theory, it's quite simple. You just put more power into it. But it's a move that is so hard that it has gotten many people to just simply quit braking because it's so dangerous. The idea is that you just throw yourself off, you just spin around in the air, and then you have to work up so much momentum that you make a double spin. But it's just very hard, and that's not the only move. There's, of course, other moves that have a similar type of status that just are very hard to go into, and people are just constantly trying new techniques, trying new ways to get into the move to get that momentum to work out their power. And yeah, there's a lot of innovation still going on. There's, in addition to those power moves, there's also people who just invent new freezes, they combine moves in new ways that just haven't been explored yet, and it's evolving now. Still.
So you make it sound like very competitive in terms of inventing new moves, new styles, new techniques. Are injuries quite a big problem in
Of course, it depends from person to person. Like there's people who go from into it from a more core perspective, from a more like perspective similar to like staying close to your base, or taking very soft steps. But of course, there are breakers who just think like, hey, they see a cool
body.
They just see a cool move and think, hey, I want to try it, and they just throw it, and then you just break something. Yeah, that happens. But that's sort of up to you. But it's also sort of it can happen. But part of to prevent that, you make stretches, you warm up before you dance, you look up proper tutorials before you try a weird move, and yeah, it's just yeah, it's sort of dependent on the situation. Haske?
Let me just throw in that breaking is a style that is not natural to the human body. So you're talking about putting your entire body weight on, let's say, a single leg or a single joint, and that will take time to condition to. So one of the most important things as a breaker is you condition your body physically to be able to handle the stress that you're putting on it. So if you don't take care of your body, it's not going to take care of you if you're going to try some of these moves. So that's one of the biggest things that, any dance, you can stress that, but breaking in particular, you see some of the poses, the shapes, the risk, the high flying, all of that takes years and years of training your body to be able to adapt to that. But, the injury side of things, you're going to have, some, maybe form of arthritis, maybe later down the road if your body just can't handle it. So, like, end of the day, you got to take care of your body, and, it'll take care of you when you want to try some of these things.
Yeah. Any more questions, or? Sure.
So, as you demonstrated at the beginning, you are quite good at your moves. So how long, if you see some new move, how long you usually take to learn it? Or,
It depends very strongly on the move and how much experience you have with similar moves. Like for example, this is a move that I've been training for quite a while. This is a flare, and it looks quite simple, but so far it's been taking me since I think past September, November of training it. But it also depends a bit on how much you repeat it, how often you train. Because if you don't train for a while, then train it again, then don't train for a while, of course it's harder to take it up. But yeah, it just sort of varies. But a lot of moves require a lot of training, a lot of repetition, a lot of learning the steps properly, and then just slowly speeding up. Oh.
Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else?
Alright.
When do we dance? When do we hit the dance floor?
Well, 2 minutes ago.
Okay.
So everybody that wants to join on the dance floor,
Yeah,
you can follow me.
yeah.
So the first one.